right, welcome along to the RTÉ Soccer Podcast. Raf Diallo here. You can listen to this podcast on RTÉ.ie, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, or watch it all on YouTube, where you'll find the timestamps for each episode in the description box. Lots to talk about this week, including Stephen Kenny's Ireland playing Greece and Gibraltar, as well as reaction to the Sports Direct FAI Cup semi-finals. And I'm joined today by former Ireland international Keith Treacy and the 42.ie journalist David Sneyd, and hope you're both keeping well. And before we get into the Ireland squad, I actually want to talk about somebody who's not in it, and which is James McClean. And he's after confirming last week that he'll be retiring from international duty after the New Zealand friendly. In the statement, which you can read in full on RTÉ.ie, he said, "It will be heartbreaking not to be involved beyond this year, but I feel now is the right time to step aside without any regrets. I lived my own and every young Irish footballer's dream and represented this country with pride." And I mean, Keith, you know, he's at 102 caps at the moment, and will presumably obviously get to at least 103 by getting the send off against New Zealand. But have to say, like, he's been a huge servant for this country.
Yeah, an excellent player. Always gives 100%. It's the bare minimum of what you expect when somebody plays for Ireland. And James, it just oozes out of him that he's a very proud Irishman. And when you have somebody who turns up every week, whenever the international windows roll around, and he's ready to run through brick walls, he plays through the pain barrier. And to become a centurion is not easily done these days. So, yeah, absolutely all credit to James McClean, an excellent player. I'm a little bit, I wouldn't say baffled, but I don't understand why he's not in this camp myself, Raf, because I listened to Stephen Kenny when he announced this squad, and he said, he's not in, but he will be in the next squad. So why not just have him in this one? Because he spoke about his training standards and bringing people up around him. So for me, I'd have had him in this squad as well, not necessarily with the view of playing him and starting him at left back, but just to have his demeanour. And I think he's earned the right just to be in the squad and be in and around it. Like I say, not necessarily with the view of playing him, but with so many caps under his belt and how well he trains, for me, it would have been a no-brainer just to have him in the squad.
Yeah, and I suppose, David, we'll be talking about him in more detail when it comes to November and in and around that New Zealand game. But, you were just telling me off air there, he's one of those players that when you would have started your sports journalism career, you've been in parallel with him in terms of how he's once he's come through and then established himself and now become a veteran. And the one thing that always stands out about him, obviously, is his character. He's very very strong-willed, and that has come across. Extremely passionate about what he does on the pitch as well as off the pitch. And the other thing as well, I suppose, on the pitch as well, he came through as a sort of old school winger at a time where they'd been starting to move to inverted wingers, and he's actually found a home then as a left wing back and thrived again in terms of his Ireland career.
Well, that's it. It's like if you go back to when he kind of first emerged really at Sunderland, and he was just so exciting. Obviously, he was young. He'd been obviously involved with Derry and stuff, but he had those couple of games where it was just one of them where, like similar to Keith, capable of getting on the front foot and beating a man and getting players excited. And there was such a kind of excitement around them from Ireland fans at that point. It's interesting. It's like it always seems as if Irish football is in that kind of almost like an incessant need to have people like that who come in and just get you off your feet and provide something a bit different. And people forget when McClean, before Euro 2012, he was that person, and as his career has gone on, he's kind of shown, well, he wasn't just that kind of winger who would be a bit of a kind of flash in the pan, be exciting and then fade away. He's kind of shown what's needed to obviously sustain a career that at various levels of become a Premier League player later in the Championship. And now obviously he's gone to Wrexham at a point where obviously it just suits him to do that. But it's like everyone knows about the stuff about regarding his kind of his views and the stance he made with the poppy, and he's kind of spoken even recently. He's just coming up about maybe. Don't think he felt he was naive to do it because he knew what he was doing with his own stance and 100% correct to do so, but maybe thinking it could lead to others maybe following suit. And it's interesting because like we've written about this before and stuff, and with players, you speak to players on the record about James McClean and so effusive in his praise for his personality and the commitment he has, and as obviously as a bloke and as a player, and then you speak to them off the record and they'll say, hell, I could not do what he did. Do you know what I mean? Like, you speak to so many different players, like players who play at the top level and what we've done, and just just have been, be honest and say they wouldn't do what he's done, and he probably, not probably, you can be sure it has been to his detriment in terms of clubs maybe looking at him and perceiving him to be a certain person. But any teammate who's kind of walked with him and been alongside him, he's the sort of character that you want with you, you know. And it's kind of stood, even you see what happened with Wigan and the trouble they would have been in maybe the back end of last season when more senior players, when they weren't getting paid, he was still kind of showing up. He was still putting contra in. He was still playing when effectively we weren't getting paid. And he's just it's one of those games where I suppose like the New Zealand one, I understand what Keith's saying as well. Why wouldn't he be in now? Maybe it's kind of thinking, well, looking maybe to I don't know if it's looking to the future, maybe could just be overlooked. But the game he'll have his, I know he had that around 100 caps. He had that moment where he obviously was able to have his family there, and then this game will be his send off. And it's very rarely happens in football where it can happen like that. But he was roared onto the pitch when he first emerged against the Czech Republic before with the Trapattoni, and he'll be roared off the pitch now when people know it's finishing. And it's very rare that you get kind of happy endings in football like that, you know, be a club career or your international career. Sometimes you're pushed out the door maybe by someone, you don't get to say goodbye and all the rest of it. And obviously for McClean, it's going to work out well for him. Unfortunately for him, it won't be at a major tournament maybe that's happening, but to get to over 100 caps and to be able to actually go out on your own terms is something that not many players are able to do. So I'm sure that's something that you'll cherish, you know. Yeah, and obviously he'll be obviously proud of having represented Ireland at a couple of major tournaments. Euro 2012 might be a little bit forgettable, but at least there was Euro 2016. And also, he said you forget he was a trendsetter. He was the one going on Twitter years ago, like, causing grief and having rows with managers and giving out about. Remember they're coming off when he didn't get a game against Kazakhstan. So that's why you laugh. When I always sometimes have a bit of a chuckle. I'll be honest, I like James McClean. I think he's a good fella to deal with. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I've got a lot of time from him, but I always laugh or he might talk about young players. But he was one of the first to take the Twitter to be given out if he wasn't getting any games. So, you know, he did break the mold in that sense as well. He was at the cutting edge of the social media football storm. Yeah, the football or the social media revolution, indeed. But anyway, the game was against Greece and Gibraltar. So Greece Friday here at the Aviva Stadium, 7:45 p.m. kickoff, and then on Monday the 16th, Gibraltar away again, same time, and both matches live on RT2 and the RT Player with coverage starting at 7 p.m. on both days. And the Ireland squad, of course, named last week: John Egan missing out through injury, Callum O'Dowda and Seamus Coleman we already knew would be absent. Caoimhín Kelleher got injured in training with Liverpool, so he's out as well. James McClean, as we said, is out. Jeff Hendrick also not included, and one of the players that is brought in is Liam Scales, who is likely to be competing at left wing back with Ryan Manning for that slot. And then Callum Robinson also back involved, and Mikey Johnston returning from injury, but interestingly no Troy Parrott as well. The other standout thing, I think we were talking about Sammie Szmodics last week in terms of his form for Blackburn, and also Plymouth's Finn Azaz, and all of them are left out. Andrew Moran as well wasn't far away according to Stephen Kenny, and could still get called in for ahead of the second game. But David, just on you know, in terms of the decision to bring in, say, Robinson over Szmodics, and it's interesting just kind of looking at how Kenny was quoted, and this was from your colleague in the 42, Gavin Cooney, when he's asked about Szmodics, how very quickly he turns it from Szmodics to talking about Andrew Moran. He is somewhat unfortunate not to be in this squad, began Kenny about Szmodics before veering to Moran. The player that's caught my attention the most has been Andy Moran. He has been absolutely terrific in both Blackburn games. Last week was very close to being called up. Physically, when you step up to international football, as we found out with some of the young players, physically it is a big jump. So that is kind of interesting. You know, Szmodics has been somebody who's been increasingly on the radar, and yet Kenny's thinking is very much towards Andrew Moran, who's going to stay with the 21s at least initially. Yeah, like that's kind of what managers do, isn't it? You know, what's it called in the PR speak? You kind of gain control of the narrative, and you kind of veer the conversation to where you want it. Because I remember happening before when Andy Lyons was obviously in smashing form for Rovers, and there was a lot of talk, well, would he be in with a shout of coming in as one of the wing backs with the Ireland squad? And very quickly, fairness, Kenny kind of brought up himself, to be honest, if there was someone from Rovers who was going to get in, it was going to be Neil Ferrugia. You know, he can be up front in that regard in terms of where he's thinking. Obviously, with Sammie Szmodics, he was the one who was kind of unearthed a little bit as well by Stephen Kenny, kind of in terms of getting everything, trying to with the passport and making sure he was going to be eligible to play, and was involved, wasn't he? He was kind of brought in and wasn't around it. So you're kind of thinking maybe it is maybe a bit of a surprise considering the form he's in, the fact he scored a goal, he scored again at the weekend, assisting, how versatile he is. And then obviously you mentioned there like Gavin's piece on the 42 when he was kind of saying, you know, sometimes he brought it in about like players understanding exactly what's required of them in terms of how Ireland play and what's going to be demanded of them. Maybe Szmodics hasn't been around it enough where he wasn't going to play, so I didn't feel there's no point where there's someone like Callum Robinson who previously has been so important and will just slot back in. And even speaking to players, just in terms of a character around the place, is just a very positive influence and all the rest, and has shown before that he can deliver goals in the international level for Ireland and be a different kind of outlet. He's a different kind of player as well than Szmodics. But yeah, like I don't know, you can maybe look at it different ways. I suppose like Keith will have a far better kind of grasp on it in terms of how players would assess it. Would you be looking, well, there's a player flying in the championship, scoring goals, not getting a sniff, but then showing maybe loyalty to someone who he knows can deliver and has got back into the form. And again, I think he actually scored as well recently, didn't he? So I don't know, players can probably look at it with both ways, but then the players who were in the squad are probably thinking, well, I'm there and that's all that matters as well, you know?
Yeah, and Keith, just on that, in terms of, you know, when there is sort of like a name that's slightly exciting outside of the squad and they're either left out or they're kind of brought in, how do I suppose the core players in the squad normally react to something like that?
Yeah, I don't think it might come up in general conversation while you're having a bit of lunch in the hotel, but I don't think anybody really bothers over it. And the Andy Moore one, there's absolutely no rush to get him into the team. You know, he's a young boy, he's still learning his trade. He's doing very, very well in the championship. There is games where he's turning up and playing very well, but there's also games where he's just drifting through and, you know, the large periods of the game. So he's brilliant, looks really good, very promising, but that one word that you can associate with young wingers or young attacking players is consistency, and Andy Moore still needs to be more consistent in his performances. But for such a young man playing at such a high level already at Ewood Park, obviously coming from Brighton as well, he's from good stock. It looks like he's from really, really good stock, and it's very easy to get excited about him. And yeah, like the Szmodics one is very, very interesting, because if you're Szmodics and you're listening to this, oh, my name's being brought up, let's see what the Ireland manager thinks of him, and he just dismisses you completely and starts thinking about Andy Moore, and you're thinking, well, I mustn't be in his plans whatsoever, because he didn't really seem to want to engage with the Szmodics question. But in terms of Robinson, decent player, we know what he does, can come off the wing and score a goal. But I'm sure if you're Szmodics, you're thinking he's had his chance, and I haven't been in yet, so he will be chomping at the bit to come in. But yeah, look, no rush, but I think with no Coleman and no Egan will be a big miss for us on Friday night. But I think Liam Scales will come in, whether it's centre half with three centre halves, one of the three centre halves, or a left wing back. I'm not too sure, but if somebody playing in the Champions League can't get into this Irish team, then you know we have real problems.
Yeah, and just yeah, sorry, Dave, go on.
I was gonna say, Raf, and I don't know even what Keith would think about this as well, or even going back, but you could even with the Morning thing, he's maybe was captain for the 21s. He was really impressive for the 21s down at Turner's Cross last month, like the goal he scored and his play for winning the penalty. But like sometimes it's one of those things where, like, I know obviously Irish players and where the Irish national team is, we're crying out for maybe something a bit different. But like what you said there, sometimes, you know, you can get that call too soon. Sometimes a player needs to have something to actually feel as if they still have to work towards, maybe, and like they can get it and feel, oh, here, I made it now, I'm a senior international, what I'm doing, that's all I have to do. I can not float along because I'm sure he's working really hard and he's on loan, and he's like, Brighton thinks so highly of him. Like, you speak to the staff at Brighton, there's a reason why he's gone to a championship club at Blackburn's level, because they feel he's someone. But like, you kind of wonder, well, you know, has he actually deserved a call up yet? Despite where Ireland are at, there's still a lot of other players who will be ahead of him and been around it. Sometimes, like, we talk about players getting too much too soon in terms of money and what can come with it, but even just recognition like that can even maybe take the edge off a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, don't mean to insinuate that that's what would happen with him, but just in general, where sometimes, you know, it's almost as if, well, getting to the Irish team isn't something that you should. Maybe it is. Maybe it's just still caught the past a little bit thinking, but doing well in the championship for a few games, I don't think should qualify for straight away getting in with the Ireland squad. Maybe, like, have that bit of a carrot there, you know what I mean, to actually get to keep on working and to try and keep on improve, you know, and get that consistency, and kind of, that's how I would kind of think about it as well, you know.
Yeah, I think it's a big sign of where we're at. Sorry, Raf. Yeah. I remember I was doing a bit of work with Stephen Kelly not so long ago, and I think it's it's either 50 Premier League appearances, I suppose, before he got an Ireland cap, or I think it was 50 or 70. Don't quote me on that, but Kells was telling me.
You're right. It's around that, yeah.
That's crazy. When you think like Andy Moran now, brilliant young player, only just blooding his teeth in the Championship, and everybody's throw him in. You're thinking like it's just a sign of where we've gone, is how strong we used to be to where we're at now. And look, there's all the time in the world for Andy Moran. You know, it's not a rush to get him in there. And if the team was doing well and playing well, I would be more inclined to say get him in, give him a taste of it. But in a struggling Irish team, you put him in there and he feels like this is deep water. You can get a bit of a slap on the wrist and think, I have a long way to go till I get there. So with a struggling Irish team, I'd say just leave him be for the minute.
Yeah, it was actually interesting just on that. Even like he was brilliant against Turkey in the first under-21s game, and then there was a bit of a drop down then against San Marino. Although it seemed to be the entire team kind of struggled a little bit, but maybe with the occasion and everything else, and the expectation of going and hammering San Marino. So there is that kind of inconsistency when it comes to young players. But in regard to Troy Parrott, Keith, as well, I mean, he hasn't had a lot of minutes for Excelsior since moving there, and obviously he had an injury going over there in the first place. Couple of goals though, as we were talking about last week. Are you surprised he's not in, or are you looking at it in terms of the game time where he's only been making kind of sub appearances that is probably the biggest factor?
Yeah, I think that's the biggest factor. You know, I always try and put myself into the player's shoes and thinking, what will Troy be thinking? And he knows straight away, if he picks up that phone and rings Stephen Kenny and asks why he's not in the squad, he's going to be told it's because you haven't played enough minutes. And yeah, he scored the odd goal here and there, but you know, it's another sign of the times. You know, when I was playing, players were scared stiff to go to the deeper Europe, because if you went there and didn't play well, you were forgotten about, and you sort of filtered down the English leagues then. But with so much social media and all, everybody knows exactly how Troy Parrott is playing, so it's not not as big as a move as it was. But Troy does seem to be getting left behind. He showed so much early promise, and you know, it's fairly similar to Aaron Connolly. Aaron Connolly came in, did really well, set the world on fire, and we expected so much of him. Troy was sort of in the same vein, where he's done really well, and we're thinking, right, what are we going to get from him in an Ireland shirt? And it's just started to become a little bit tough for him now. He's going to have to double down and really, grab the bull by the horns, because his career is at a crossroads now. Same way Aaron Connolly's was. Aaron Connolly is scoring goals at Hull. He seems to have turned it around, but I always say, it takes a minute to get a reputation and a lifetime to lose it. Aaron's doing very well, but he has to do more. He has to be more consistent. Troy needs to get the injury worries behind him, get a lot of minutes under the belt, start playing regularly, start scoring some goals, start assisting, and then he can knock down Stephen Kenny's door and say, I should be in this team, because it's a struggling Irish team. And any time, if you're a senior player playing in a Premier League anywhere across Europe, you have a chance of getting into this Irish team. And Troy falls into that bracket. So if he can get more minutes and play a hand in assists and goals, then by all means he will get himself back into that Irish team. But at the minute, it's too easy for Stephen Kenny just to say you haven't played enough minutes.
And at right wing back, David, in terms of Matt Doherty, so he's not been starting all that often for Wolves this season. He came on at halftime yesterday against Aston Villa, and then Festia Busele is at the very, very start of his international career. Obviously got the couple of caps in the September window, but he seems to be starting regularly in Italy now for Udinese, and seems to be thriving, it seems, from the reports we get of how he's performing. So this window, probably, I imagine Doherty's experience will win out, but it seems there's a tipping point soon. Obviously, Seamus Coleman is still in the background and will come back at some point.
Yeah, see, this is going to be another interesting one, because just from the point of, it comes back to where maybe sometimes managers can pick and choose reasons. Like obviously Keith was saying there about, say, Troy maybe part of possibly not playing enough minutes, which is right. But it happened in the last game when Northern played the Netherlands, when obviously Matt Doherty barely kicked the ball for Wolves in the previous, but then he plays the game, and and there's a couple times he looks a bit sloppy in the game. You go back to that mistake, it was his mistake, Justin, where error of judgment with the crossfield pass from Van Dijk, where he does really well to read it, but then plays to put the ball back inside the Dutch break, and then you get the penalty. Like if Ireland play, this is the other aspect to it. Will Ireland stick with the three at the back? And like John Egan is going to be out. Obviously, Omar Madeli again hasn't really
been playing. Yeah.
Hasn't really been playing as well. Like Scales will come in. Like will he revert? Like Darragh O'Shea has kind of been in and out. As maybe look at it and what's happened at Burnley as well. Too, and obviously Shane Duffy, he's obviously maintained his place with Norwich. Will he be that focal point again. But again, we kind of saw, as much as that, we kind of saw some of the kind of, when you're trying to change things and how we're going to play, you're going to have the same issues when Shane Duffy is in the middle. Like, he has that experience, which I think is going to be vital, and which I think he will play. So you're kind of looking at it from the point of view of wing backs. If he plays with the three, will there be wing backs like Ebesele? Kenny's spoken before. He doesn't actually really see him as that position. He sees him more as an attacker and more as a forward. The guy would be very, very surprised, considering Matt Doherty has come off the bench in the last few games for Wolves and has played more football coming into this window, if he's not going to be starting on the right side. So, but then there may be that issue to contend with in terms of, well, do you change this? Do you change the system then a little bit? Like we could have mentioned it there. Would we actually see Aaron Connolly, like we were saying there, but would we actually see Ferguson as that focal point, Connolly at one side and Ben the other? I don't know if we'll see all those three fellas on the pitch at the same time. Do you know, that's my own instinct. I know I was just curious there, because I was just going back and I was trying to remember. But like, if you go back to the game against Greece, obviously it was Adamida who started with and Ferguson started. So Ogbene wasn't there, and see Smallbone was in the mix in that game. He's still playing for Southampton. So like, it's kind of a strange one in the sense, and it's kind of like a little bit of a microcosm of where we've been at with Kenny, where you can't say for certain, well, these are the personnel who are available. They're the ones who have always kind of been trusted in these big moments, because there's always been that little sense of appeal continuously, you know. So, and that's where we're still at. And like, elephant in the room here, depending on what, like, Ireland need to win these games, but even like Stephen Kenny's future is still, it's very, very delicate. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, we had the press conference last month when, after with Director of Football Mark Cannon, with the CEO Jonathan Hill, where he had to confirm, yeah, Stephen Kenny will still be in charge, because you're getting whispers from people and you're hearing stuff, well, actually decisions we made, will Ireland have to qualify, but like, the chances of Ireland qualifying now are very, very slim, even getting into a playoff. So that's the elephant in the room here as well a little bit, is like, it's not as if you can be going in here saying, well, pick this player because they'll be available for the next campaign. At the stage, like we've always been for the last few months, where it needs to get a result first and foremost.
Yeah, and with that in mind, Keith, I mean, is there a chance, like even mentioned there, a slight change in formation? So maybe against Gibraltar, he did change it at halftime in the home game back in June, and maybe he might go 4-3-3 from the start when they play them again on Monday. But even against Greece, we saw the left side of the defence in Athens was the weak point, where essentially both of the goals that Greece scored, the penalty, the handball for the penalty came from that side, and then the Georgios Masouras goal as well came from that side as well. So with, let's say, if they play the back five that they have been, are you playing Liam Scales on the left side of the three, or are you putting him in as a sort of more defensive player as a wing back, or do you go to a back four and he plays either left-sided centre half or as a defensive-minded sort of left back?
Yeah, I think he will stick. I think Stephen Kenny will stick. I think he play the three centre halves and two wing backs. I think Matt Doherty will play as a right wing back just because needs must. You know, it's not that we don't have other players that can play in that position. I just think Matt is very good going forward and he's a great outlet for us. So he will play. I think Duffy, Collins and Scales for me would be the three. I would play Duffy as the middle of the three, and I would put Scales and Collins either side of them. So any balls down the side of our wing backs, we've legs there. Duffy, obviously, any balls into the box, because Greece do put some decent balls into the box. I'd have Duffy there to get his head on it. And look, the left side, we were a little bit weak against Greece, but I don't think you can just highlight the left side of the pitch. I think the opening 10, 15 minutes of that game, we were absolutely awful. And again, we go back to the camp they had in Turkey, 10 days in Turkey before the Greek game, and they looked like an absolute bunch of strangers out there. We should have conceded a penalty. I think we conceded 8 corners. So there's just so many things you can't do in international football away from home. It was the total opposite. You have to keep the ball, or you at least turn them. You don't try and keep playing in front of them and inviting pressure, letting the crowd get on top of us. But yeah, to answer your question, personally, I think he's going to go a 5-2-3. I think he'll play the three centre halves. I'm not sure he'll play left back. Maybe Ryan Manning, because when he was speaking about the left side and James McClean, and he kept bringing Ryan Manning's name up, and Ryan is playing well. And Ryan's been playing well last season as well, played really, really well and couldn't get into the Irish team. So I think maybe Manning, even though he didn't play very well against the Dutch or the French, And even Alan Brown, if Alan Brown was to get a shout in the middle of the pitch, or even at left back, I think Alan Brown is a great engine, can always nick you a goal from a set piece as well. So I would like to shoehorn Alan Brown in there somewhere, but I'm just not sure where. So it's very, very hard to second guess Stephen Kenny, but I think it will be some sort of version of a 5-2-3.
Yeah, we'll see about Brown as well. So I think he came off at half time for Preston as well on Saturday. I think he was a bit ill, but hopefully it's something that kind of alleviates himself anyway, because he is in the squad anyway. But anyway, those games against Greece and Gibraltar. So Greece, it's Friday, 7 p.m. Coverage starts on RT2 and RT Player, and then Monday will be Gibraltar. And before we turn our attentions to more domestic matters, David, I mean, there is the whether if we don't get to Euro or 2024 next summer, there is potentially Euro 2028. However, we're not sure if we're going to be able to qualify automatically for it as one of the 5 co-hosts. Obviously, that hasn't been decided yet. So what happened, of course, is Ireland and the UK set to be Euro 2028 hosts unopposed, because Turkey have withdrawn, are going to join up with Italy for 2032, and Dublin is expected to host 6 of those games, 4 in the group stage and 1 of the last 16 and 1 in the quarterfinal, and also a redeveloped Caveman Park would have 5 games as well. And the FAI have been in their submission to UEFA as part of this, they've been mentioning the socio-economic benefit to this country of staging the tournament, which would be an estimated €241 million. But again, there's a little bit of uncertainty around it, David, in terms of the potential to qualify automatically as hosts, given the number of co-hosts that there would be, but also at the same time, I think we need to also be kind of mindful of what the legacy will be, even though we're nowhere near that yet.
I know. Well, if you're being facetious, the legacy will be all the inspired children of Ireland. Raf, you'll see this on their doorstep when some of them will still be getting changed in shipping containers that were there in the 1990s. You know, I don't know. I kind of. Maybe I don't know. When this was obviously even the initial bid, because this has obviously been known for a good while, and obviously last week when it was confirmed obviously about Turkey, and it was realised that Ireland were definitely going to be involved in this. Like, it just kind of strikes me. I think I did this when I was did Game On last week, and I was just chatting about it there, where I could be totally wrong and I could be out of order, but I just feel as if it's the sort of thing that looks good for certain people's CVs, in terms of at the top of the association, whether they can point to it and say, well, we were able to deliver X, Y, and Z. But for me, looking at it from where what the people in the FAI should be kind of prioritising is the grassroots game, and obviously the League of Ireland and everything that goes with that. Now, if they say, well, the legacy, this is where they have to be, they can talk about legacy and they can say all that and say those benefits, but then that needs to actually be properly kind of sustained. So, well, talk to us, what do you plan? If they say, well, do you know what, this is the reason why we've gone big on hosting this associations of this tournament, is because it means over the next 10 years it's going to be able to provide X amount of money that we can invest in Irish football. If that's not laid out, then how can you be anything other than skeptical about the actual benefits of this? Like, at the moment, one of the benefits is another association in a different jurisdiction in a ground where no Irish kid who plays soccer is going to benefit the stadium. Do you know what I mean? Like, how does that benefit Irish football? But as I'm saying, if they're talking about legacy, that has to be backed up, and it has to be properly, there has to be something tangible there. It has to be something that they can say, well, this is what the actual plan is. Do you know what I mean? Then you can say, well, all right, that's fair enough. Then you have to go and deliver on it. There's been column inches written about this, and it's been already said to death, and it's been done even in the past. There can be so much just nonsense and wishy-washy kind of PR speak about all this, but unless you actually deliver on the ground on what Irish football needs, in another 20 years you'd be thinking, well, what was the point? Do you know what I mean? Like, we've mentioned that press conference earlier from Jonathan Hill and Mark Cannon. Obviously, at that point, they still didn't know, well, actually, who was going to qualify. It does seem as if maybe at least 2 places will be held for nations who are hosting if you don't qualify automatically. And Jonathan Hill was insisting that all the countries involved in this bid need to be actually part of the qualification process and not qualifying automatically. So that, just for the fairness and stuff. But I don't know, like, we kind of started this podcast talking about James McClean, and like, that was over a decade ago when he made his debut, and it's just, there's so many of the same problems and the same issues and the same stuff that we're talking about then that journalists and stuff were talking about 10 years before that. And my fear is that even if Ireland qualify in 10, 15, 20 years after, there'll be the same debate saying, well, what's actually happening on the ground with Irish football? That's my own assessment of where we're at, to be honest. Yeah,
because of course it has to be the grassroots, and in terms of investment there, otherwise nothing really changes. You get a major tournament here, and great.
But even more so, but even more so now than ever, where there's so much demands now on players, on coaches, to make sure that actual players can be taught properly because of what's happened with Brexit. We're talking about having this industry of football and stuff and all the rest of it, but like, kids need to be there to actually have the proper infrastructure in place, whether it's, and I'm talking about that from League of Ireland clubs, who still, a lot of them still are doing their best, but they're doing their best with volunteers who haven't got full-time staff, academy members. Do you know what I mean? And all the will in the world, like, you're going to have an element of burnout and trauma with that, because that can only be sustained for so long. Then you're relying on the next group of people, but then that next group of people coming in who've been well educated and spent money on getting all the qualifications, if they're getting treated the same as what's happened before, they'll be lost to different systems, or they'll just pack in like themselves, you know, like, I don't know, it's just, they're still on it. I find it personally, and I'm not even involved in terms of that with regards to coaching side of it, and all, I know Keith would be, but in terms of League of Ireland and seeing it, there must be a huge sense of frustration. Like, I remember even going back a few years ago, actually after Luxembourg beat Ireland, and doing an article just looking at where the academy structures were at and stuff. And Liam Kearney, who obviously down in Cork, doing great work, but he was even saying back then, like, people need to be treated with respect, where the work that they're putting in feel as if they're actually valued, because he was saying that they do work to a certain degree down there, but then they can't offer them anything sustain. They can't offer them anything kind of substantial to actually make it their living. So how can you expect people to be giving up their time to produce players who are then going to go on and make that job their living? Do you know what I mean? You're still relying on the volunteers, and you're going to get left behind. You already see it happening.
Yeah. And of course, we'll find out in terms of details with confirmation first by UEFA about the tournament itself, and then the structures in terms of qualification in the long run. At the same time, there's going to be another multi-nation tournament coming in 2030 with a proposal of 6 hosts, so Spain, Portugal and Morocco being the core ones for the 2030 World Cup, and then opening games that are going to be in Argentina, Uruguay and Paraguay, obviously to mark the centenary of the first World Cup back in 1930, which was hosted by Uruguay. Argentina reached the final at that time, and then Paraguay are the traditional home of the South American Football Confederation. But anyway, we'll move on very quickly. Also in other news, Eileen Gleeson to remain in charge for the Nations League campaign for the Irish women's as well, and they play Albania home and away respectively on the 27th and the 31st of this month. And then the Women's Premier Division, Athlone Town beat DLR Waves 1-0 on Saturday. Bows and Wexford drew 2-2. Sligo Rovers and Cork City also involved in the thriller, so that's 3-3 in that game. Peamount beat Treaty United 2-1. And then Shamrock Rovers won a Dublin derby against Shelbourne by 3-1. So Peamount, again, cementing their place at the top of the table, 9 points clear of Shamrock Rovers, who are also level on points with Shells. And then Galway, 8 points further back. And then they're all going to be turning their attentions to the Cup semi-finals, which are going to be this Saturday, 4:00 kickoff between Shamrock Rovers and Shelbourne, and then Sligo Rovers against Athlone at 6:00. And speaking of cups, the men's FAI Cup semi-finals also took place, and we know who's going to be playing each other in the Aviva Stadium on the 12th of November. It's going to be Pats against Bows, a repeat of the 2021 final. So Pats yesterday went to Turner's Cross and beat Cork City 2-0 to reach the final, and then the day before that, Bohemians beat Galway United 1-0 away, and they were down to 10 men, of course, for that as well. So let's start on that game. Let's listen first to Declan Devine, who was speaking afterwards, and he was very passionate, and even beyond being delighted with Bows getting to the final, he also reserved quite a lot of praise for Galway United.
Declan McDade, you just said to me you felt like you played the 90 minutes yourself out there. That was blood and thunder stuff out there with the, I don't know, many yellow cards, red cards.
Crazy
Heck of a game.
Crazy game. But look, before we even go on about our lads, I think coming here today, having Galway back in the Premier League, with attendances like this, a management team and a team like that benefits the whole Irish football. And full credit to Galway United. They deserve massive credit for what they've done this year. And getting to the semi-final and really putting it up to us, because we're a good side. And Galway really put it up to us. And I think they come out of it as winners as well. So full credit to John and his team. But our boys, magnificent. they go down to 10 men, and the cards were just flashing like mad. It was stupid, it was crazy, it was maybe 2 bad tackles in the game. Now players are missing cup finals and all the rest. It's madness. But delighted for the club. Delighted for every one of the players that have bought onto what we're trying to do this year. It's a new group of players. Real new group of players. Brought on 14, 15 players to start the year. And the work rate that they put onto the one tonight was second to none. Down to 10 men, balls coming on the box. Delighted with them.
Yeah. There's one thing about the game, though, is you bossed it well when you had the 10 men.
I think even with 10 men, we still have 2 or 3 chances. Clarkey is one who puts over the bar. I think just after half time, John Afolabi has a chance. But look, in the cup, it's all about getting through. We scored a goal a good time just before half time. Spoke about knocking down the 10 men. It happened, and to be fair, each and every one of them. The players are magnificent at this club. They keep coming back for more, and the relationship they have with the fans is something else. So delighted.
Yeah. And overall, Cork or Pats tomorrow? Who do you think?
I'll go down there tomorrow. We still got both of them to play in the league. But you don't want to just get to the final. You want to make sure you come away with a trophy at the end of it. So we'll enjoy it tonight. I'll be in Cork tomorrow, and whoever it may be, it may be.
Right. Cheers.
All right, so that is Bohemians manager Declan Devine speaking to John Kenny, and hopefully you did get a chance to catch his breath, Keith, afterwards, because it was a frantic game. I think about a dozen yellow cards, and we'll talk about the red card later on, but Bohs really had to fight for that.
Yeah, it was a great game. It wasn't, the prettiest game in the eye. It wasn't the best game of football, but very, very entertaining. I would back up what Declan Devine is saying about the referee. I think there was maybe 1 or 2 strong tackles in the game, but they weren't, silly, ridiculous, out of control tackles. And the referee flashed the yellow card straight away, and then he couldn't stop. He made a rod for his own back, and every challenge then seemed to be a yellow card. It was stupid stuff. The referee was very, very experienced. There was no need for him to go down that route. And like I say, I think he made a rod for his own back. But what I did like, every now and then Galway would put on the tackle, but Bohs wouldn't just stand there and give out. They would fly into the next tackle, and it was a real team backing each other up. And look at what Declan Devine is saying is right. Galway put a lot of balls into the box. Some of the second balls just didn't drop them, and even when they did, Bohs managed to get bodies in the way. And it was a real... I've seen Bohs in Inchicore this season. The front 3 really, really good. Afolabi, Q, McDonald, they're all really, really good players. Can they get down and do the nitty-gritty when balls are coming into the box? Will he put bodies on the line? Will they defend like their lives depended on it? And they did. They were really, really good in a defensive mindset. So excellent from Bohs. It sets up a huge final. Some of the Galway players, I was a little bit disappointed with David Hurley, but it's tough to say that because it wasn't a great footballing game. I don't think anybody stood out as having a great footballing game. Afolabi had 2 1-on-1s. He would probably like to have done better. We hit the post, and I think Clarkey saved him. So, yeah, great game. A really good game. Very, very interesting game. Physical game. And, yeah, delighted to see Galway back in the Premier League. And I think they'll absolutely be fine next season. I was speaking to Lisa Fallon after the game down in Galway, and she was reinforcing that she thinks Galway will be absolutely fine next season as well. So, yeah, it's great to have another club from outside Dublin, a huge club from outside Dublin back in the Premier League.
Yeah, and just going back to the red card for Redkowski, because I know talking off air, there was the second yellow is harsh, but yet you'd seen a couple of incidents involving the same player before where he wasn't actually penalised for it.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. The first couple of minutes of Washaria and Rakowski, there's a ball over the top. And Washaria pins Rakowski, spins him, and Rakowski goes to the ground, and the referee gives a free out and gives a Washaria a talking to him, thinking that looked like a foul the opposite way to me, but whatever, the 6-1, half a dozen to the other. Then it happens again a couple of minutes later, and the referee gives a free kick to a Washaria and yellow card for Rakowski. You're thinking that's very, very similar, and you get 2 totally different outcomes there, and then it happens again. And I do have sympathy with Rakowski, because the ball that's coming into a Washaria, it's not going straight down the goal line, it's going away from goal, it's going in the diag. So even if a Washaria was to spin Rakowski and get onto the ball, it's going away from goal, and there is covering defenders. So to give him a second yellow card, knowing that there's a red card is going to be the consequence of it, I thought again was really, really poor refereeing. And a standalone incident, yes, he can say that's a yellow card for me, and nobody would argue with that. But the fact that it happened 3 times in the game and he'd already get 2 different outcomes. I thought, you know, you can give him a stern warning and tell him this keeps happening, you're walking a tightrope. To give him no real warnings and give him the second yellow card at the quickest possible outcome, I thought was harsh, very, very harsh. But again, Bohs, you need to keep a lot of credit onto Bohs, because Galway started to ramp her up. They put more and more balls into the box. Conor McCormick straight right at the edge of the box when he had a free kick, hits the wall, it comes out, it's a yard or so wide. There was a lot of nearly moments from Galway, but like I said, Bohs defended really, really well, and massive credit to both teams. Like I said, it wasn't the prettiest game on the IRAC, but very entertaining.
Yeah, and of course, Pat's joining them in the final on the 12th of November. So let's listen to Pat's manager, John Daly, and then also his Cork City counterpart, Richie Holland.
John, congratulations into a cup final. How are you after that performance?
Thanks very much. Obviously, it's the second goal obviously makes it that little bit less stressful towards the end. I think as long as it's 1-0, they're always in the game and you're hanging on and defending. I thought the lads defended magnificently, and then an unbelievable strike from Conor to seal it and just probably deflate Cork right at the end. And as you can hear in the background, delighted for the fans and everyone connected with the club, the players, the staff. It's a great day for us, and we've had to do it the hard way, you know, travelling all over the country to get ourselves to a final. So we're looking forward to it.
You love to see players take their chance when they come on as a substitute. Conor now, of course, probably give you a headache for selection another day.
Yeah, well, we've got plenty of football between now and the cup final. So, you know, Conor done really well when he came on. Tommy done well for the first 60 minutes or so. He worked hard, worked tirelessly. So, and James McClean coming on and getting a strike. You know, I spoke to him before he came on to make sure he gets shots. He's got a great left foot and obviously too hot for the keeper to handle. And Conor was unbelievable to finish it.
You mentioned there's plenty more football to play, but bodies are tired out there. People are going down with cramps, so it's hard to get them back into the swing of things again now.
Yeah, I think there's a couple as well struggling with illness. We had Adam Murphy struggling with illness overnight, and that's why he didn't play. He was obviously sat on the bench. Chris Forrester's got a sore throat as well, and you know, the international break coming now gives them time to rest and recuperate and go again. I think it just gives you something to look forward to. You know, credit to Cork as well. Fantastic football club, I have to say. You know, coming down here, packed out Turner's Cross, they made it difficult. You know, and I wish them all the best. I'd like to see them staying up. I think it's a fantastic club to have in the top division.
Well done and congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Richie, commiserations. They got the early lead. You chased it, unfortunately punished you again in the second half.
Yeah, just a few moments in the game really that cost us, you know, and it's come from basic errors from throw-ins. Yeah, look, when you give good players opportunities, they're gonna punish you, and that's what Pats have done today. I think overall there wasn't much in the game and stuff like that. We've created more than enough today to score, and we haven't done it. So it's disappointing that way, you know. I thought, in fairness to the lads, they worked hard all the way through the game. You know, they've showed good application, and it was just that final bit that caught us today, you know.
Bodies, I mean, it was really energetic in the first half from your side and they created numerous chances, but bodies just seemed to fade away and get tired in the second half.
Yeah, there was a little bit of a lull in the middle of the second half, and that's why I made the changes. I just wanted to re-energise things again, you know, and I just needed to get the shed involved in the game as well a little bit, like, you know, and just felt that when we had a corner in the second phase, we might have been just a little bit better with keeping the ball alive and stuff like that, but it didn't happen, you know. So yeah, look, fair play to Pats. They've defended well today and defended their box well and stuff like that, and look, as I say, they've taken their chances, and good luck to them in the final.
Are you happy with some impacts, some efforts of performance today?
Oh yeah, look, the application is there. I thought we created enough opportunities today again, you know. We've had a couple of headers in the first half, a few shots at the edge of the box maybe that we could have taken a bit earlier, so on, and we did create enough today to score, but look, it's disappointing that we've come away, and I think it was one that we've left behind us.
And you need to now pick the heads back up and go again?
Yeah, look, I've just spoke to the players inside, is that we just need to use this disappointment as a motivator going forward, because Cork City needs to stay in this league. You see it today, the fans, the crowd, the atmosphere here, you know, this is one of the biggest clubs in the country, you know, and we can't go down, you know, and we need to work hard every day now for the rest of the season and put on a performance when we do come to the big games at the end of the season, you know.
Commiserations, thanks.
Thanks a million, cheers.
All right, so that is Richie Holland there, and before that John Daly, both speaking to Valerie Wheeler after game at Turner's Cross. And David, this was a game where it was clear you could see Pat's quality when it really mattered, and Cork City didn't actually, you know, they performed quite well actually overall in terms of chances created, but maybe huffed and puffed a little bit.
Yeah, it kind of just shows you why Pats are at the top end of the table, or trying to get into Europe, and why Cork are obviously going to be in the relegation playoff, because Cork put it up to him, had a couple of opportunities. Like Rudy Keaton's had a great season, goal scoring wise, but the couple of chances maybe he had, I'm probably thinking more so the header. That's probably the best chance he has, and it just goes a bit wide. Whereas Pats, when they had that opportunity, they weren't able to punish them, you know. And even like Mark Doyle, he kind of like, he probably come under a bit of criticism from some Pats fans for maybe that end product and moments where maybe he doesn't deliver, but then can get into that box and be that danger of coming in from that side and getting on the end of the cross. And then the goal, like the impact, that's probably, even just looking ahead now even to the final, if you're looking at it in terms of the bench, like you look at some of the finals, how they've been over the last little while and how tense they can be. Like if Pats can have that kind of impact off the bench, obviously with McClellan and obviously Conor Carty, the way he took his goal was just really impressive, you know. Like having that kind of that variation is going to be critical. Like it proved it in the game. Like there were probably two best moments of quality in the pitch. Like in the first half, thought Aaron Budge done really well and was really impressive for Cork in midfield. But just those moments in the semi-final when they had got the crowd behind them and they were on top and they just couldn't get back into the game. And then as the more it went on, as I said, Pats were able to just take the game away from them by bringing on that bit of quality from the bench and actually having that impact. And that's what it's going to be needed as well in the final as well. Obviously, is those bits of quality in the box. You kind of seen it with, if you've gone back into the Bows game with Conley, having that determination to see the chance emerging when Afalabi done really well to kind of create a chance there with nothing and then have that burst to get in. And that's why it shapes up to be such a great game in the finals, because it's two teams now who you just couldn't call it. You really couldn't, and it's going to be a smashing game. And hopefully, you would like to think we'll break the 40,000 barrier in the Aviva.
Yeah, and Pat, in terms of Keith, in terms of the final, then with Pats and Bows now, obviously it's 2 years on from when they last met. But from what you saw yesterday, and what you saw Bows, and obviously there'll be a month to go, and plenty could change in between in terms of injuries elsewhere. But how do you feel they match up this time?
I don't think there's an awful lot between them, Raf. Either way, I think, as David said there, I think you wouldn't be surprised if Pats were to win. You definitely wouldn't be surprised if Bows were to win. I think I hate saying this about finals, but it really will be who handles the occasion that little bit better, who keeps their discipline, and who does the ugly stuff. And I hate it. More than likely, I have a feeling this final will be decided by a set piece. For all the beautiful footballers that are going to be on the pitch, the Keith Buckley, Chris Forrester, all these boys, McManus, I love watching him for Bows as well. I just have a feeling they're going to cancel each other out. It'll be a brilliant game and decided by a set piece. So, look, Bows obviously defended the set pieces really well against Galway on the weekend. So, look at the one thing for me, Mark Doyle. I have to highlight Mark Doyle. Pats played Cork last week, and Pats win the game 1-0. It's a Mark Doyle header at the back post, brilliant header. Just sort of ghosts inside the right back. It's the timing of the run. As soon as the right back has a look to see where he is, he's already on the move inside him, and he wins that header. It's brilliant, and he does it again on Sunday in the semi-final for his second goal. It was really, really nice. The timing and the movement in behind is excellent. And it was one thing that it was Sam Allardyce used to always shout at me about being a winger. He used to shout Pomo, 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 and it was the position of maximum opportunity. And whenever the opposite winger is crossing the ball, you have to get yourself inside the post, because that, to me, he used to say that will get you between 5 and 10 goals a season as a winger, just getting yourself into that Pomo position. And Mark Doyle does it really, really well. And if you watch him, he will do it 10 times out of 10. He will make that run, and maybe twice, 3 times the ball will finish, will stop to him, and he will end up hitting the back of the net. So really, really good for Mark Doyle. But in terms of the final, Raf, I really, really can't call it. Could even go all the way penalties. I don't think there's an awful lot between the two sets of teams.
Yeah, they do tend to go all the way to penalties, but apart from last season, of course, which was a bit more comfortable from Derry City's point of view. But while a month might be a long time to wait in football, half an hour is an eternity as well. And David, I mean, this is the joys of journalism. As we were talking there about the cup, it was confirmed that Sammie Szmodics, who was the subject of what we were talking about earlier, has now
the new saviour has arrived. All as well.
Yeah, he's been called in. Aaron Connolly is injured, so you can listen to everything that we've said previously. Anyway, it's all valid. But of course, this is obviously look. Szmodics must have been close to the squad anyway, in terms of selection, and it's proven by this.
Yeah, and also ties in with what Keith was saying. It kind of maybe shows you as well how far further down Troy Party is in the pecking order too. You can kind of take that element from it. It's an interesting one. Like we kind of said at the start, you've got a fella coming into a squad who you would imagine has probably never been as confident in his career in terms of where he's at. That can only be a good thing. And now the job for the manager is to try and harness that. You know, kind of, does he see him? Will he see enough in training over? Because the players are obviously going to be joining up between now and later on this evening. There's media tomorrow. There's going to be a handful of players speaking tomorrow. Then obviously the game at the end of the week. So, like, he has a chance now to come in. Like, he's never got, as I was saying, he's never been as confident in his, I can imagine, in his career in terms of where he's doing the business at the level he's at. So, you would like to think it can only be a good thing for Ireland that you've got a player coming in who is in such good form. It's not as if it's a fella coming out of the cold, is not getting a sniff, isn't doing that, and you're like, you just need bodies in the door. Like, it's a fella who's flying at a really good level in the championship.
Yeah, and Keith, just in terms of selection then for Greece, because of course Szmodics has been in the camp before a couple of years ago, during the camp in Spain ahead of the Andorra and Hungary games. Hasn't actually been capped yet. Is he more of a potential impact sub late on? Obviously, a start might seem a little bit maybe premature, given he hasn't really been part of the picture in recent times.
Yeah, I would struggle to see him starting. Raf, I think he's, out of all the, when you think of the forward players we have, I do think Stephen Kenny will stick the three up front. At times it will be one up front, but we'll be joined by the two wingers. I think the one that's going to be left, and I think we could all agree, it's going to be Evan Ferguson when he's fit. He's going to be up there. So Szmodics, I think, would be in direct competition with Ferguson, and I don't think Kenny will play two out and out strikers. So that, to me, would say Szmodics will be a replacement for Ferguson. Will he play him on the wing? I'm really not too sure. I think with the likes of Benny, Obafemi, all these quicker boys that can get up the pitch and get close to Evan Ferguson, you want them. Szmodics is a brilliant finisher, playing really well in the championship. It's just a shame for us that he's in direct comparison or direct rivalry with Evan Ferguson. And, you know, if you would play the two of them, I think it'd be very, very brave. But given what the Greeks did was in the first game, how well they kept the ball, how quickly they caused problems, I would imagine that we won't play two up front, that it will just be Evan Ferguson and two wingers trying to get as close to him as possible. So for me, I think Szmodics, brilliant to see him in, but I think we might just we might see a couple of minutes of him at best, if I'm honest.
Yeah, and hopefully that's the last of the squad updates while we're on air as well. And saves me the bother of having to keep an eye elsewhere. But anyway, in terms of the Premier Division, there were games on Friday. Not a lot of goals, actually just the one by Will Jarvis for Shelbourne as they beat Dundalk 1-0. And then, of course, the other game, it seems like Derry City's season is petering out. They drew 0-0 at Drogheda United. But I suppose just on the Shells goal, like Will Jarvis, great composure, but Jack Moylan's role in it, Keith, like it was pretty incredible.
Yeah, and Jack is getting so many plaudits throughout the league now, and rightfully so. I think he's a super little player. Him and Sean Boyd were a brilliant partnership, and obviously Jack now is going to be taking the brunt of the goal scoring for Shelbourne, and he seems really, really capable. And I said at the start of the season, if anybody who finishes north of Shelbourne will be there or thereabouts for European football, and Shelbourne for me, it's just gone from strength to strength to strength, and it really excites me now when I hear that they could be really heavily financially back next season. It makes you think with Damien Duff, with the sort of pull that he would have as a manager, even across the water in England, there'll be so many younger players that would fancy coming in the door and playing with him. So I'm really, really excited to see what they can do next year. The way they, you know, when you look at them, when you look at Shelbourne on paper to the likes of Dundalk, Pats, Derry, Rovers, they're nowhere near as good as these teams on paper, but they compete with them week in, week out. They beat the teams they're supposed to be. And like I say, they're very, very competitive in the league. And anybody in that bracket of, you know, Pats, Derry, if anybody finishes north of Shelbourne, they'll be in and amongst the European football. So, yeah, look, I think doing really, really well. And I like the way he plays. I like the way he gets about, really physical. He's a brilliant finisher as well. But again, I think we need to see a little bit more consistency, because I've watched a lot of Shelbourne this season, and every now and then a ball can bounce off, and the physical battle he's getting getting bogged down in that. Brilliant footballer, but we just need to see it on a little bit of a more consistent basis.
Yeah, and Shells are fourth at the moment, just ahead of Bohemians, but Bows do play UCD in their game in hand on Thursday, so they could potentially go back above them. But if Shells, or whichever, like obviously Bows can still get into Europe via the Cup if they were to beat Pats, but Shells will hope to finish above Bows in fourth and then hope that Pats win the Cup, and then they would themselves get into Europe, which would obviously, in terms of all the backing they're going to get financially as well, that would be an extra boost. Derry City, of course, as I said, they're now within 4 points of Shamrock Rovers, but Shamrock Rovers now have a game in hand after those drop points for Derry. But David, I mean, the other side of it, from Drogheda United's point of view, they were also in the news last week because they're close to a takeover from a US sports investment firm called the Trivella Group, which also owns a club in England, Walsall. So it still has to get approval from the members at their EGM, which will be towards the end of the season. But again, it's another sign of this kind of multi-sport club model or multi-club model. And also, I guess, at the same time, Drogheda have been kind of looking for investment, and something Kevin Doherty did point to in terms of his decision to turn down Cork City.
Yeah, like this, the thing, even with Drogheda, and all, obviously this has been in the works for a while in terms of with this deal, and then also just in terms of investment as a whole, it's something that the club have been needing. Obviously, you listen to kind of how he was been talking about that before as well, and kind of saying like they need the money to be coming in. It's the reason why, other than UCD, Drogheda are the only part-time in the sense of when they train, and obviously the fact that players would have other jobs as well around that are left in the league. You know, that's because they weren't willing, considering Drogheda's history as well, which everybody well knows in terms of like what happened to them when obviously around the success they had in the late kind of 2000s. So you would like to. They were very adamant that they weren't going to be kind of stretching themselves, and this was the limit that they could go to. And now to try and push themselves forward, it seems as if obviously it has to be voted through. But you would imagine that if it's got to this stage, it's probably a deal that the people in charge of the club are happy with and content with. Then also, like you said it there, the whole multi-club model, it doesn't sit right with me in terms of even like of just the nature of it and what it means for just the integrity of sport as a whole. And you see at different levels, it's something that obviously has caught on, and maybe the powers that be in world football and European football maybe caught on the hop a little bit by just the nature of how quickly it snowballed. But it's something that we've seen already in the League of Ireland. Obviously, we said with Shells and the takeover by Hull City and stuff. So it's you would like to think it's going to make Drogheda a stronger force. Whether or not Kevin Doherty will stay on, like he's got his own job, will they look to say we'll bring in someone different? That's going to be another element of actual upheaval possibly coming down the line. And yeah, it's like Gatton, there's a degree of skepticism that I think is healthy, but then also you can well imagine, considering the progress that Drogheda have made over the last little while, even with how things are, you can be sure that there'll be fans also excited, because it is a club, you look at their attendances and all, that are doing things, an awful lot of teams right, and it's going to be incumbent upon the people taking over to continue that good work as well.
Yeah, and in the first division, Cove Ramblers beat Longford Town 2-0. Wexford won 2-1 at Kerry, so Wexford are safe in the playoffs now. Treaty United beat Finn Harps 2-0 and very much keeping their playoff hopes alive. Athlone are occupying that final playoff place, but they're going to be looking a little bit nervously over their shoulder for the last couple of games. They lost 1-0 at home to Bray Wanderers, and then Galway and Waterford play each other on Tuesday. But Keith, I mean, the top end of the playoffs has obviously been that's kind of secure for Waterford. It has been for a long time. Cove as well, now Wexford, but that little battle now between Athlone and then Treaty and even Bray Wanderers, who are still mathematically in it below them, that's going to be a little bit exciting to watch now for the run in of the last couple of games.
Yeah, the playoff system always gives you that sort of stuff, doesn't it? There's one or two that can still catch the coattails of the ones that have been up there. When you look at the likes of Waterford, have been excellent all season, then you have the likes of Treaty and Athlone still hanging on, and could they be caught and nicked it? I think it's excellent. You know, when I played across the water, I got promoted. I never actually played in the playoff system. I got promoted automatically, but I've always looked on at the playoff games, and I was always envious. Always wanted to be a part of them. And it just brings a little bit of excitement towards the end of the league. And I have to be honest, I can't see past Waterford. I know there'll be a couple of other teams there that will be thinking, well, we're in with a decent shout in the air, but I think the firepower that Waterford have, and I think when you look at geographically as well, Galway coming up, if Waterford could come up as well, I think it'd be great for the league. You know, the bigger clubs coming up from outside Dublin, it makes it a more expansive league, bigger attendances. Yeah, I have to be honest, I think it'd be very, very exciting, Raf, but I'm finding it hard to look back Waterford and Roland Coughlin.
Yeah, and before we go, obviously, Keith, we have to talk about Arsenal beating City, because I know you've probably been waiting to talk about this now. It wasn't a great game, but the boost psychologically that it'll have for Arsenal is going to be huge.
Yeah, I think it was a long time since Arsenal had actually got a win over Manchester City. And like you said, Raf, it wasn't a great game of football by any means. The opening couple of minutes of the game, City should be 1-0 up. Guardiola has been cleared off the line, and then Nathan Ake, there's a bit of pinball in the box. It pops out to Ake. He should do better, should score. So Arsenal get away with that one. And after that, it was just all middle of the road stuff. There was no real goal line chances. Haaland wasn't in it. And I thought Saliba was really good up against him, Marshall really, really well. But from an Arsenal point of view, I thought Odegaard was quiet. I thought Rice was quiet. I thought Trossard was taken off at half time. But the big thing was Martinelli coming on the pitch. He just looked like he had the Manchester City game set. When he got injured, it looked like he wanted, I'd be back for this no matter what. And he did come back a little bit early, and you're always worried, you know, is he coming back too early? Is he going to hurt himself again and go another 2 months down the road? But he was excellent when he came on. A huge slice of luck for the goal. But look, I was asked this before. It was an awful game. It was a poor game. Arsenal didn't turn up. City didn't turn up. If it's an open, expansive game and Arsenal and City go toe-to-toe and there's chances at both ends, who do you back to win that game? I back Manchester City to win that game. So I think that's the way Arsenal have to beat Manchester City. I don't think they can go toe-to-toe. Well, you know, maybe they can go toe-to-toe and get lucky. But I think if you play this style of football that, you know, there's not a lot of chances you keep the ball for long periods of time. And a little bit like when you play long. You're playing for moments in the game, the set piece, corners, free kicks, whatever it is, you're playing for those moments. Arsenal were playing in moments. It was just in a different way. So, look, I think that's the way to go about beating City. You can't get lucky, you can't beat them, but, you know, it's the hope that kills you, Raf. And I'm listening to Gary Neville, and he's saying maybe there could be a treble hangover this year from Manchester City. Rodri getting sent off a couple of weeks ago never does stuff like that. And Kovacic doesn't look to have hit the ground running. Brilliant player. And I'm even trying to talk myself into it. I still don't think Arsenal will win the league, but I have a lot more hope than I did this time last week.
Yeah,
believe. Allow yourself. Allow yourself.
Plus, I have the sport on me as well. We're top of the league as well. You know about that.
And David, I mean, it does prove how important Rodri is to that team. I know that the whole hangover from a treble is a bit oversold probably, and City do tend to start seasons a little bit slowly, and then February onwards they're unstoppable and they just go on these kind of fairly, you know, unstoppable runs. But Rodri is definitely key, because they do seem to be very vulnerable when he's not there.
Well, yeah, he's just like, I know it's how simple. He's just an exceptional player who does so much in every aspect for that team. And even for the best teams in games like that, when you're missing a player like that, regardless of if it's Rodri, don't get me wrong, Kevin De Bruyne is out as well. You know, like they maybe can cope a little bit better without him because of that, the nature of some of the creative players they have. But again, and I'd actually be interested to know even what Keith's thoughts. But you can't, even no matter what level, I think sometimes feel that there's certain players who other players, no matter how good they are, when they see a fella alongside them, just feel a bit better. Just feel as if they can get through moments in games or feel, you know what, everything will be all right. And even top teams like Man City, who have just won the treble, someone like Rodri seems to be in that bracket. Do you know what I mean? Where other players just look to him, and once they see him, it's like, right, thank God he's there. Like we'll get through this. Especially when you see what the whole process of how a Guardiola team plays. Rodri is just so central to that. But again, you've kind of touched on it as well. Like this is kind of a little bit similar to last year with how they started. He didn't like it was Arsenal who went off on a great run, and they were a good few points ahead. I think at one point were 9 points ahead of City. I think at one stage last season they might have been, or definitely to the point where people were thinking, Jenny or City are well off it here. But then they have that capability of just being able to go on serious runs. So like, I don't know. Like, I think it's a bit too early to be talking about a hangover maybe from last year with City. It's just like sometimes getting into their stride. And if you look at it, it's not as if they're like miles behind. Like, they're still right in the mix there. Do you know what I mean? And it has still been very impressive.
The final thing, Keith, that I did want to bring up was in terms of refereeing consistency. I know VAR was the big talking point, the other one, but as you mentioned, Kovacic probably should have been sent off for a couple of yellows. The Odegaard one, probably an orange, and Declan Rice definitely caught him. That should have been a yellow on its own. But then there was the Newcastle game when they were at West Ham, and Bruno Guimaraes, looking at the highlights, he gets booked and then he commits what is a clear second yellow challenge, and yet the referee sort of waves it away, and it's just some of these decisions always, they'll always generate controversy.
Yeah, and that's the one thing that I know as being a player. The one thing you want is consistency. You can't give out as long as the ref is consistent in what he's doing. And 1 minute, you break the midfield line, Guimaraes pulls you back, clicks your heels, it's a yellow card. Nobody has any problem with that. He does it again 2 minutes later. Everybody's saying it's a yellow card, and it just seemed to me that the referee shied away from it a little bit. Look, you want common sense to be used. You do want the ref to use his common sense. If it's a nothing tackle, if it's just a little, a coming together and it's a foul, you don't just book him for the sake of it. But I think Guimaraes knows what he's doing with the second yellow. He's looking over his shoulder and he's thinking, this could be a yellow. Why he's doing that is absolutely beyond me. It should have been a second yellow and it should have been a red card. The Kovacic one is crazy. And I don't think Kovacic makes that tackle last year. When he's playing for Chelsea, I think he's a little bit more comfortable in his own skin and he doesn't have to go and make the second challenge. The first tackle on Odegaard, he sort of jumps into it as well. And the one thing that refs always say is you're out of control there, you're using too much force. And when you slow it down and you look at the way Odegaard's ankle actually rolls, could have easily been an ankle breaker. It was a really, really poor tackle. If it had been a red card, I wouldn't have been too annoyed about it. I wouldn't have been saying that's a shocking decision. I think a red would have been accepted largely. A yellow is accepted also, but for me, it was right bang in the middle. It was an orange card. And then when Declan Rice has the ball there, Kovacic goes to close him down. And I think he's thinking, if I can win this and press on the front foot, we'll win the ball and we'll score the goal. And the gaffer will think, oh, well done. But he needs to be more clever than that. Declan Rice is waiting, thinking, are you silly enough to go and dangle a leg here? He's actually silly enough to go and make a sliding tackle. How the referee said it straight away. As soon as the Arsenal players realise Kovacic has just been booked, they start, what about another yellow? Michael Oliver's shaking his head straight away, saying not a chance. So that for me, he had clocked it as well, thinking that's a silly tackle. And again, if Kovacic had a walk down the tunnel straight after that, I don't think there would have been any sort of given out. I think it's a definite second yellow card and a definite red. But as it was, Arsenal ended up getting a lucky deflection and a lucky goal. So I don't think anybody's too bothered from an Arsenal point of view.
Yeah, but anyway, we're straight into an international window now, of course, as we've said. So Ireland v Greece, live on RT2 and the RT Player, and also live commentary on RT2 FM's Game On this Friday the 13th. And then, of course, there'll be Gibraltar the following Monday, and we'll be reacting to that on next week's podcast after both of those games. But David and Keith, thanks very much for your time.
No problem. Take care.